The morning everything changed, I was standing in my own garage staring at a stack of cardboard boxes that weren't mine. I didn't move for a good minute, just stood there with my coffee cup in my hand looking at what used to be my workshop. Shelves I had built myself, pegboard I had hung myself, a workbench Gloria, and I had sanded and painted together on a Saturday afternoon 12 years ago. All of it was still there technically, but you couldn't see most of it anymore. Cardboard boxes were stacked from the floor, almost to the ceiling along the entire back wall. A folding table sat in the corner with a printer on it and a laptop open next to a stack of bubble wrap. There were shipping labels printed and stacked near the door. My name is Harvey Hartwell. I'm 66 years old. I spent 34 years as a licensed electrician in Columbus, Ohio, before I retired. I wired new houses, rewired old ones, and did commercial work on the side when the schedule allowed. I know how to build things, and I know how to fix things, and I know how to look at a space and understand exactly what belongs there and what doesn't. That garage was mine. Every shelf, every hook, every labeled bin. My late wife Gloria helped me design the workshop side. We talked about what we'd make in there together once I retired. She didn't live long enough to see that happen. But the space was still hers as much as it was mine, and somebody had turned it into a shipping depot without once asking me. I went inside. I poured the rest of my coffee down the sink. I didn't say a word to anyone, not yet, but I made a decision that morning. I was done waiting for things to get better on their own. Let me tell you how we got there, because none of this started with the garage. My daughter, Nadine, is 32. She's a registered nurse at a hospital on the east side of Columbus, works long shifts, takes it seriously. The kind of person who remembers details about her patients that most people wouldn't bother to keep track of. I have been proud of her since she was about 4 years old, and I don't expect that to change. After her mother passed from cancer 5 years ago, Nadine and I got closer in the way that grief sometimes pulls people together. She called more. She visited more. We figured out how to be a smaller family without falling apart. She met Clifford Pruitt about 3 years ago. He's 36, works in real estate sales, knows how to walk into a room and make people feel like he was looking forward to seeing them specifically. First time I met him, he shook my hand and said, "Nadine talks about you all the time, Harvey. I've been looking forward to this." Good eye contact, firm handshake. Remembered my coffee order from one mention in passing. I told myself I was being cautious for no reason. Nadine was happy, and that was what mattered. They got married last spring in a small ceremony outside the city. I walked Nadine down the aisle. I held it together until the moment she took his hand, and then I didn't. I'm not ashamed of that. 4 months ago, Nadine called me on a Sunday afternoon. She said the Columbus housing market had gone sideways, that she and Clifford had been trying to save for a down payment, but kept getting outbid on everything in their price range. She asked very carefully if they could stay with me for a few months while they saved more and waited for the market to settle. She said she knew it was a lot to ask. My house has 3 bedrooms. I've lived alone since Gloria passed. The place is paid off and half the rooms sit empty most of the year. I said yes without hesitating. She's my daughter. That's not even a decision. That's just what you do. The first several weeks were fine. Nadine handled more than her share around the house. She restocked the kitchen without being asked, took out the trash before I got to it, fixed a leaky faucet in the guest bathroom because she remembered I'd mentioned it in passing 2 months earlier. That's Nadine. She pays attention. Clifford was polite. He asked about my work, seemed interested in the tools in the garage, helped carrying groceries. He rinsed his dishes and didn't leave his shoes in the doorway. I'm not saying I was completely comfortable, but I wasn't uncomfortable either. I was watching the way you do when you're not sure yet what you're looking at. The first thing I noticed shift was small. A few weeks in, Clifford started parking in the center of the driveway instead of on the right side. My side, the side I had parked on for 22 years. I'd come home and have to angle in awkwardly or park on the street. I mentioned it once, easy, no edge to it. He said, "Oh, absolutely my fault," and moved the car that evening. 3 days later, he was back in the center of the driveway. I let it go. I told myself it was nothing. Parking habits are parking habits. Then one Saturday morning, I went out to the garage to do a small repair job for my neighbor Marvin Colby, who's been my friend since our kids were in the same elementary school, and who retired from electrical work about 2 years before I did. I opened my main toolbox and stopped. The pegboard above it had been rearranged. My tools were all still there, but they were on the wrong hooks, grouped differently than I kept them. Someone had gone into my workspace and moved my things around without asking. I stood there for a moment. Marvin was watching from the driveway. He said something wrong. I said, "No. Give me a second." I put everything back exactly where it belonged. I didn't mention it to Clifford, but I started paying a different kind of attention after that. About 6 weeks after they moved in, Clifford sat down with me at the kitchen table after dinner one evening. Nadine was in the other room. He said he had been thinking about ways to contribute more to the household and that it made sense for him to take over managing the utilities. Electric, internet, water. He said he was good with numbers, that he could probably find savings on my current internet plan, and that it would free me up from the hassle of tracking it all. I looked at him for a moment before I said anything. I said, "I've been managing my own bills for 40 years, Clifford. I'm good." He nodded and smiled and said, "Of course, just a thought." 2 weeks later, he brought it up again. This time, he came at it from a different angle, said he'd been looking at internet providers in the area and thought he could get me a better rate if I let him make the call. I told him I'd look into it myself if I wanted to and moved on. I called my brother Floyd that weekend. Floyd is 61, works as a CPA, has been doing tax and financial planning for 30 years, and is one of the sharpest people I know when it comes to understanding what someone is actually doing underneath what they're saying. I told him about the utilities conversation both times. Floyd was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Harvey, a man who wants to manage your bills in your own house is not trying to save you money. He's trying to get his name on your accounts." I didn't say much back, but I heard him. I started writing things down after that, not in any formal way at first. Just dates and notes on my phone, the parking, the pegboard, the 2 conversations about utilities. I didn't know yet what I was building toward. I just knew I wanted a record. A month later, I went out to the garage on a Saturday morning and stopped cold in the doorway. The workshop side was gone. Not the physical structure, not the shelves or the workbench, but the space itself was gone. Clifford had filled it with inventory. Cardboard boxes stacked 4 and 5 high, a folding table with a printer and shipping supplies, a stack of printed labels by the door. He sold some kind of home goods product online as a side business. I had known about the business vaguely, but had no idea he had been treating my garage as his warehouse. I found Nadine in the kitchen and asked her if Clifford had said anything to her before he moved his things in there. She looked uncomfortable right away. She said he had mentioned needing a little storage space and that she had told him the garage had room. I said, "That workshop was your mother's and mine. We planned that space together." She went quiet. Then she said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't think of it that way. I should have asked you first." I believed her. Nadine doesn't operate with bad intentions, but the result was the same regardless of the intention, and I was standing in my own home looking at a workshop that no longer existed. I went back out to the garage with my coffee and stood there for a while. Marvin came by that afternoon. He looked at the boxes, looked at me and said, "You know he's running a business out of your house. You understand what that could mean for you legally." I didn't. Not fully. So Marvin explained what he knew, which was enough to make me want to know more. I called Floyd that evening and described what I had found. Floyd said to text him a photo of the boxes and whatever labels or shipping materials I could read. I did. He called me back the next day. He had looked up Clifford's LLC registration through the state business portal. Public record. Clifford had registered his company using my home address as the official business address, not a mailbox, not a registered agent. My actual home address, on the street where I had lived for 22 years. Floyd explained what that meant in plain terms. If Clifford's business got into a legal dispute with a customer or a supplier, my address was attached. If there was a tax issue with the LLC, the paper trail ran to my house. He said, "You didn't consent to this, you didn't sign anything, and you may have liability exposure you don't even know about yet." I sat with that for a moment. Then I asked Floyd to connect me with his attorney contact, someone who handled property and business matters. Floyd said he knew exactly who to call. That week I went through everything I had written down and added to it. The parking, the tools moved on the pegboard, the 2 conversations about utilities, including the exact dates, the workshop filled with his inventory, photos of the garage I took that same day with timestamps, screenshots of the LLC registration I pulled from the state website myself, the text message Clifford had sent about the internet plan, which I had not deleted. I put everything into a folder, paper copies and digital copies. I did not tell Clifford any of this. I did not change my behavior at home. I kept having dinner with him, kept watching the news in the evening, kept being the same person I had always been, but I had a plan now. And there was one more piece I was going to wait for before I moved. My birthday was coming up, November 8th. I was turning 66, and I had a feeling Clifford was going to hand me exactly what I needed. I have never been a person who makes a big deal out of his birthday. Gloria used to tease me about that. She said I was the only man she knew who actively tried to talk people out of celebrating him, but I do observe it. Every year, Marvin comes over. Floyd drives up from Dayton. We have a good dinner, watch some football if there's a game worth watching, and that's it. Simple, quiet. Mine, 3 weeks before November 8th, Clifford brought it up over dinner. He said he wanted to do something special for me this year. He said I deserved a real celebration, not just the usual small group. He had been talking to some colleagues, he said. People from his real estate office, a couple of developers he worked with regularly, some contacts from his online business. He wanted to throw a proper dinner party. I told him clearly that I appreciated the thought, but that I wanted to keep it small. Marvin, Floyd, my neighbor Carol from 2 doors down, who had been close with Gloria for years. That was the guest list I wanted. Clifford nodded the way he always nodded when he had already decided not to listen. I noted the date of that conversation in my phone. 2 weeks later, he mentioned it again. This time to Nadine in front of me, talking about how many people he was thinking of inviting and what kind of food he was planning to order. He said it like the decision had already been made and we were just discussing logistics. I said again that I wanted a small dinner. He smiled at me and said, "Harvey, these are good people. You'll enjoy meeting them." I said, "I told you what I want, Clifford." He said, "Of course," and changed the subject. I added that conversation to my notes too. Date and time. The morning of my birthday, I came downstairs at 6 a.m. Nadine was already in the kitchen, still in her scrubs from a night shift, on the phone and clearly stressed. Grocery bags covered every inch of the counter. She put her hand over the phone and told me Clifford had finalized the guest list at 35 people and they were arriving at 7 that evening. I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen and looked at those bags. 35 people in my house on my birthday, after I had told him twice clearly that I did not want this. And from what Nadine told me in the next few minutes, the guest list was almost entirely Clifford's contacts. Developers he was trying to close deals with, buyers he wanted to stay in front of. A couple of people from his online business network. He had taken my birthday and turned it into a networking event. He had taken my house and turned it into his venue. I went back upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the window for a minute. Gloria had a saying she used when someone was pushing past a line they had been shown clearly. She would say, "Harvey, don't let anyone take what you built." She said it to me more than once over the years, usually when I was being too patient about something that didn't deserve my patience. I heard her say it sitting there on that bed as clearly as if she were in the room with me. I came back downstairs. Clifford had come down and was in the kitchen looking at something on his phone. Nadine was still on a call. I said, "Cancel it." Clifford looked up. He had that composed expression he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. He said, "Harvey, these people have already cleared their evening." "The food is being delivered at 4, I said, "Cancel it." He set his phone down on the counter and looked at me with something different in his face then. Not the easy confidence he usually carried, something harder underneath it. He said, "Your opinion doesn't matter here. This is happening in my kitchen, in my house." At my address that he had put on his LLC without asking me, I didn't raise my voice. I walked to the front door and opened it. I held it open and looked at him and didn't say anything. Nobody moved for a few seconds. The kitchen was completely quiet except for Nadine's voice low on her phone in the corner. Then Nadine ended her call. She looked at Clifford. She looked at me. She looked at the open door. She said quietly, "Clifford, cancel it." Something shifted in the room when she said that. Clifford looked at her for a moment. Then he picked up his phone and started making calls. I closed the front door. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a fresh coffee. I didn't say anything else about it. That night we had 4 people at my table: Marvin, Floyd, Carol, and Nadine. Floyd brought a pecan pie. Carol brought a bottle of red wine she said Gloria had recommended to her years ago, and she had been saving for a good occasion. Marvin told a story about the worst job we ever worked together. A rewire in an old Victorian in Clintonville where nothing was up to code and everything we found made it worse. And we laughed the way you laugh at something that was only funny in retrospect. It was a good evening, the right evening. Clifford sat at the far end of the table. He ate quietly, answered when someone spoke to him, and did not look at me directly for most of the night. I had expected to feel some satisfaction about that. I didn't, particularly. I just felt like I was finally sitting at my own table. 2 days after my birthday, I asked both of them to sit down with me at the kitchen table after dinner. No preamble, just ask them to sit. I had the folder in front of me. I did not open it right away. I started by telling them, in order, everything that had happened since they moved in. The parking, the tools rearranged on the pegboard, the 2 conversations about utilities, the dates of both, the workshop filled with inventory without asking. The birthday, both times I said no and was ignored. I kept my voice level. I wasn't angry, or at least I wasn't performing anger. I had been through all of it enough times in my head that it came out organized. Clifford started to say something after the part about the workshop. I held up one hand and said, "I'm not finished." I told them about the LLC registration. I watched Clifford's face when I said that. The composure held for a second, and then something shifted under it, a small tightening around the eyes. He knew I had found it. I said, "You registered your business to this address, my address." Without telling me, without asking me, Floyd looked it up. "It's public record." Clifford said, "Harvey, that's just a formality. It doesn't mean anything practically." I said, "It means something to me legally. My brother is a CPA. I've spoken to an attorney. They disagree with your assessment." I opened the folder then. I slid a copy of everything across to Nadine. Not to Clifford, to Nadine, the time-stamped photos of the garage, the screenshots of the LLC registration with my address, Floyd's written summary of the liability exposure, the printed text thread where Clifford had pushed twice about taking over the utilities. I let her read it. I didn't rush her. The table was quiet. Clifford said, "This is a bit much, don't you think?" I didn't answer him. I was watching Nadine. She read slowly. She went back to the LLC page and looked at it again. She looked at the dates on the photos. She set the papers down and looked at her husband and did not say anything for a moment. That silence told me something I had been wondering about for weeks, which was whether she had known more than she let on or whether she had genuinely not seen it clearly. What I saw on her face in that moment was not guilt. It was recognition. She was seeing the full picture for the first time, laid out in order, and she was understanding it the same way I had understood it when Floyd walked me through it. I slid the last document across the table. The attorney had drafted a formal notice. It stated that Clifford's right to occupy the property would terminate in 60 days from the date of the letter. It required that the LLC registration be updated to remove my address within 30 days, or I would file a formal complaint with the Ohio Secretary of State's Business Registry. It was 2 pages, clean and professional, with the attorney's letterhead at the top. Clifford read it. His jaw tightened. He said, "You had an attorney draft this? Against your own family," I said. "Against someone who put my home address on a business filing without my consent. The family part was your job to consider before you did that." He looked at Nadine. She was still looking at the papers in front of her. He said, "Nadine." She looked up at him. She said, "Did you know this could create a problem for my dad?" He said, "It's not a real problem. It's bureaucratic." She said, "Floyd thinks it's a real problem. His attorney thinks it's a real problem." She paused. "Did you ask my dad before you put his address on those forms?" Clifford didn't answer that. Nadine looked at me. She said, "Dad, can Clifford and I have some time to talk?" I said, "Take all the time you need." I picked up my folder and my coffee and went out to the garage. I stood in the workshop space for a while. The boxes were still there, the folding table, the printer, the shipping labels. I looked at the workbench Gloria and I had built and thought about the afternoon we spent doing it. She had been particular about the height. She looked up the ergonomic recommendations and we adjusted it twice until she said it was right. She was right about most things she took the time to research. I didn't feel triumphant standing there. I didn't feel much of anything in particular. I felt like a man who had done what needed doing and was waiting for the result. Marvin texted me from next door. He said, "How'd it go?" No question mark. That's how Marvin texts. I wrote back, "Done." "Waiting," he wrote back, "Good man." I stayed in the garage until I heard the back door open. Nadine came out alone. She stood next to me and looked at the boxes for a moment and then looked at the workbench. She said, "I remember when you and Mom built that." I said, "She picked the height." Nadine almost smiled. Then she said, "We'll be out before the deadline, Dad. I'll make sure of it." I nodded. She put her hand on my arm for a second and then went back inside. I stood there a while longer in the quiet of the garage, in the space that was still mine underneath everything that had been stacked on top of it, and I drank the rest of my coffee. They were out in 5 weeks, didn't need the full 60 days, found a rental in Westerville with enough space and a short commute to Clifford's office. Floyd confirmed the LLC registration was updated within 3 weeks. My address was removed. The paper trail no longer ran to my house. The morning after they left, I got up before the sun, made coffee, walked out to the garage in the cold and hit the light switch. The workshop side was empty, all the way empty down to the clean concrete floor. No boxes, no folding table, no printer. Just the shelves I built, the pegboard with every tool in its right place, and the workbench Gloria and I had spent a Saturday afternoon getting exactly right. I pulled up a stool and sat down with my coffee and didn't do anything for a while, just sat there in the quiet. The kind of quiet that a space has when it belongs to you again and you can feel it. I thought about the whole thing from the beginning. The parking, which I had told myself was nothing. The tools on the wrong hooks, which I had told myself was an accident. The utilities conversation, which I had let go twice. The workshop filling up with boxes while I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to make things difficult for my daughter. The truth is, I had seen every one of those things clearly when they happened. I understood what they were. I just kept deciding it wasn't the right moment to say something. And every time I made that decision, I taught everyone in that house that the next thing would be allowed too. That's the part that stayed with me sitting in the garage that morning, not what Clifford did, what I allowed. I'm not saying I was wrong to let Nadine move in. I'd do that again without hesitating. And I'm not saying Clifford is the worst person I've ever encountered. He's calculating and he's careless about other people's boundaries, but I've known worse. What I'm saying is that my patience, which I had always thought of as one of my better qualities, had been operating for months without any backbone behind it. Patience without a line you're willing to hold is just a longer version of giving in. Nadine calls me twice a week now. We've had dinner 4 times since they moved out. Last month, she showed up on a Saturday morning by herself, and we spent a few hours reorganizing the garage together. She knew where most of the tools belonged from helping me out there when she was a kid. We didn't talk about Clifford much. We talked about Gloria, about the workbench, and how her mother had looked up the measurements 3 different times before she was satisfied. That was a better conversation than anything we'd managed in the months they were living here. I think what happened underneath all of it is that I had confused being a good father with being an easy one. I thought saying yes to everything that came through my door along with my daughter was part of loving her. It isn't. You can love someone completely and still hold the line on what's yours. Those two things don't work against each other. Knowing the difference is what I should have understood at the start, but I know it now. The workshop is mine again. The tools are where I put them. My address belongs to me and nobody else. And on weekend mornings, I sit on that stool with my coffee, and the garage door cracked open, and I listen to the neighborhood wake up, the way I did for years before any of this started. Some things, once you take them back, settle right into place like they were never moved. That workbench is one of them. So is the feeling of being comfortable in your own space. You can lose it slowly without realizing it's going, and you can get it back. But you have to be willing to do the thing you've been putting off. If something in this sounds familiar to you, if there's a corner of your life that doesn't feel like yours anymore, decisions getting made without you, someone using your name and your space and your good nature without once stopping to ask, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not being difficult when you hold the line. You're not being unreasonable when you say enough. You're not failing anyone by remembering that what you built is yours. The garage is yours. The table is yours. Your word in your own home is the one that matters most. Don't wait as long as I did to act on it.